was like a teenager here in Hollywood. I was a child actor, but when I was a teenager, I used to go to the commissary a lot at 20th Century because they had a great commissary. MGM, 20th and Paramount, I thought they were the best. But 20th Century, the stars at commissary days. Matter of fact, I used to see a lot of English actresses like Peggy Cummings. She just arrived, and she was on her bicycle going to the commissary. And Patricia Medina, the most...
Not on her bicycle.
I know, but you... London, English, born in London, but English, the beauty of, you're known as the beauty of that time, of the 50s. You know, world-famous beauty, Patricia Medina. That name, and then it became Cotton, who you got married to, Joseph Cotton.
Indeed.
But before, London, born, show business, actress, when? When did it all begin?
I have no idea when it all began. I really wasn't, you know, I'm not one of those people who had a burning desire from a child to be an actress. I kind of stumbled into it.
Joe Rock, okay, I'm going to throw that name at you.
Yes, Joe Rock had a studio at Elstree, where a lot of the studios in England are, and we had a country house very near there. We were going to Paris, and he and his family asked if they could use our mummy and daddy had met them, if they could stay in our house, so we went to Paris. And with our holidays, I was at school. I must have, God knows what I was running around.
You were a teen.
Oh,
right.
Less, I think. And running around the house, and Mr. Rock said to Mummy and Daddy, that girl will look wonderful in pictures. And that indeed didn't please them at all. They said, well, sorry, but she's got to go back to boarding school and she's not going to be in pictures. But however, he did...
Encouraged.
He was very sweet to them and said, well, when she leaves school, would you let her make a test with me, just for fun, let her make a test. And they said, oh, yes, all right, we'll let her. When she leaves school, make a test.
But the test, J.R. Rank, come on, one of the greatest studios in England. Was it J.R. Rank? I mean...
No, I did a religious...
A religious?
A little religious movie.
Oh,
I was a little girl who...
Oh, okay. But how did the J.R. Rank come in?
I don't know. I never. He produced the religious movie.
Religious movies at that
yes.
time. I see.
Yes.
And you did several of the movies of the religious type of films.
Not many. Some of the I'm credited with doing some films that I didn't do.
Really?
I also get fan mail. A brunette, and they say, "Would you sign this, please?" And I said, "It's not me."
When was your screen test here at MGM? You took a screen test at MGM, did you?
No, I didn't. No? He signed me without a test.
Without a test?
Lowe signed me. I signed for 3 straight years without a test.
He just brought you right over from London?
He said that he didn't need a test, that he'd only felt like that twice before. Once was with Greer Garson, and the other time was with Mickey Rooney. Well, I've always admired Greer Garson, but I thought being likened to Mickey Rooney was the greatest compliment I could have had. I couldn't have been happier.
Sacred Heart. Wonderful film with Claudia Colbert and Walter Pidgeon and June Allison. This is at MGM.
Oh.
Tell me about that.
Oh, that was we rehearsed beforehand. Claudette in particular, I remember, she was so nice to me. I was new and hadn't done anything. She was particularly generous and helpful, and I liked her enormously. June, of course, became a friend. And
June Allison was wonderful. Here's a picture I have of you. Get this, if you can get this close up right here, of Claudette. I think you're on the set here. Right there she is. With her hands. Look at Claudette. This is a relaxed film. And that young man there is Sterling.
Yes, Bob Sterling.
Bob Sterling. He looks wonderful. Hollywood days. Boy, those were the glamour days. Come on, Miss Medina. Patricia Medina.
Well, I know they were the glamour. I think they were the glamour days, but I'm sure people today think today are the glamour days.
I'm looking at your green today. When I look at Patricia Medina in green, you were married to one of the most gorgeous men on film. They say Tyrone Power. But Richard Green, eyes, beautiful.
He was very, very, very handsome.
You were married, that was your first marriage?
That was my first marriage. Some people say it broke up because we couldn't decide which one was the prettiest of the two of us. That's not true.
It is not true.
He was the prettiest.
How did you meet Richard Green? Did you do a movie with him?
No, it was during the war. He'd come over he had been already in Hollywood. At 19 he was a star, and he had come over, and I was doing small, just starting in pictures, and the director gave a dinner party for the people, and I was invited. I don't know why. And I sat next to Richard, and I thought, oh, what a handsome man! I'm sure. I hope I get on very well with him. And we didn't agree on anything we said at all. We disliked each other intensely. And 3 weeks later, we got married.
3 weeks. Wow, from hate to love.
Well, there was a war on.
You also entertained the Allies, and during
At the end.
At the end, that was wonderful.
At the end of the war.
You did that.
Yes.
And tell me about moving into the Garden of Ella.
Oh, that was great.
When you
And my
arrived.
heart is broken that there is no longer the Garden of Allah.
Tell me about that when you first arrived here.
Well, I thought it was. I didn't really know the history of it all. I had to find out about it. I had no idea. I just thought, here it is, and there's a wonderful bungalow, which, by the way, had happened to have been Errol Flynn's bungalow.
Right.
And he had apparently had great trouble having his room done because whenever the maids made his bed, he goosed them.
He didn't pinch him, but he goosed him.
I don't know. I never heard any more about it. Whether they enjoyed it or not, I do not know.
But that has a wonderful history of great people, writers, actors.
Oh, everybody. Scott Fitzgerald. But just
Tell me about Scott Fitzgerald. You
Well,
remember?
that was all before I came.
Oh, was it?
Yes, I missed all the great ones.
But you came here in the 50s, though.
Yeah,
that was in
but
the 50s.
they weren't there.
And then when it closed, then you moved across the street to
I walked
Chet.
across the street with all my clothes on, my tears streaming down my face because the Garden of Allah was going to be raised.
Right, yeah.
I went across the street to the Chateau Marmont, where I moved.
And that's another great place, Chateau
I know,
Marmont.
I really found them.
You certainly did. Working with Fox of Har, tell me, who was in that with you? The Fox of...
Well,
was that?
he wouldn't word it this way. He'd say I was in it with him, Rex Harrison.
Rex Harrison,
Yeah.
right. That was a great film.
Yes.
Another great movie.
He's a great actor, too. He was.
English.
Mm-hmm.
Was he fun on set to work with, Rex?
Rex was more fun off the set. Rex was a 100% actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him saying about when some years later he made Cleopatra, which wasn't an enormous success,
Right.
but Rexy was.
Yes.
And somebody said to him, didn't it upset you that Elizabeth and Richard were having this great romance? Didn't it upset you? He'll hold up the movie. And Rex said, no, I just sat in my dressing room and stayed with Caesar.
Uh-huh.
So he was an actor.
Yes.
On the set, he was an actor. Off the set, he was
Yes.
great fun.
Yes. Patricia Medina, your mother was English,
Mm-hmm.
your father was Spanish,
Right.
and you grew up in England and also France. You speak French, Italian, Italiano, Spanish,
Certo che sì.
English, of course. How many? But those are languages.
Only 4.
You know, your marriage to Joseph Cotton, first of all, you have a book. You wrote a book.
I wrote.
And the book is called Layback in Hollywood. Look at that. Look at that beautiful. Being married to Joseph Cotton, one of the great, great actors, elegant actors. How did you meet him?
I met him up at the Selznicks. I had met him many times, and then I made a picture with Orson, and Orson told me that he couldn't cope with me. I was very difficult. He said the only person who could cope with you would be my best friend.
Right.
And I said, well, Orson, who's your best friend? And he said, Joseph Cotton. And then sometime later, I met Joe again up at the Selznicks. And I used to go up there with Joe and Rexy Harrison. They both were widowers.
Right.
And Jennifer called me and said, I think it's time Rex and Joe came out.
Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer Jones called me and said, why don't you bring them up? So she said, I said, I think it's a very good idea if they came out. She said, Joe could pick up Rex and then they could pick you up. That should make everybody very happy. And indeed it did make everybody very happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it made Rexy as happy as it made Joe and me very happy.
Difficult writing the book because when Joseph got ill, you took care of him, dear, for a long time. They say this love between you and Joseph Cotton was like the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. This love was a true love, like you two royalties of Hollywood. Tell me about that. How do you feel about that?
I don't know, the royalty has anything to do with it. All I know is I wish I was still looking after him. Not that I want him to suffer, but I miss him dreadfully.
Uh-huh. Was it
I
painful
couldn't
for
have
you?
loved him more. I couldn't have loved anyone more than I loved Joe. He was the love of my life, and he still is.
Was it painful for you to put this on paper?
Yes, at first I started only writing about Joe. And then I realized that we were so much a part of one another that I had to come into it too, that I had to show how it happened. So then I went back and started as a child and came through to the time when we met and we married, and then his awful illnesses that he was so enormously brave about. And that was difficult. It was very difficult after that, because I went into a deep, dark pit of depression, and I would really counsel anyone. I'm not the only person who's lost someone they love, but I would counsel anyone not to do that. Don't go into that depression. It doesn't bring anyone back. It doesn't help you. It is disastrous, destructive, negative, and you have to come back and face life. And really, only this year have I decided.
It took you a long time.
It took me too long.
Took you too long. Because a lot of friends try to help Patricia Medina.
They did, and they were I am so grateful for all my friends, in particular Jennifer Jones, who was wonderful, and many others. And they were all very, very, very kind to me and very helpful, but I was really beyond help for a while.
Living and being married to this great love, memories, fond memories around pictures, beautiful, it will always be there. What is your fondest memory of Joe Cotton? You call him Joe. Not Joseph, you didn't call him, but Joe. He liked
and
Joe.
he called me Patricia.
And he called you Patricia?
Always, never Pat. Patricia, always. I suppose the memory of the whole thing, the whole man.
The marriage, the man.
The man, life, the living.
Did he have a great sense of humor?
Oh, marvelous, ironic, wicked, witty, wonderful sense of humor. Wonderful sense
What
of humor.
time of day you used to get, because you lived in Palm Springs, you too?
We lived in Palm Springs after he'd been ill.
Right.
Because he had to swim every day. He'd had a stroke.
Yes.
And although it hadn't affected his limbs, and it did affect his speech.
His speech.
Which, with that wonderful voice that he had.
Wonderful.
That was just terrible. And he was so, how anybody, an actor with a voice, so, as well known as Joe's was, who could be that brave. If I hadn't adored him, I would have just adored him for his bravery.
What did he talk about with you when you were in Palm Springs? When you used to write and things, you know. What did he used to say to you when you were alone with him at those wonderful moments?
I'm not
precious.
going to tell you.
You're not? Okay.
No.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Patricia Medina, you have a wonderful remembering things here. I love your remembering things in your book.
Well, I have an extraordinary memory. I never have kept a diary. I never wrote anything down. Everything is from memory. I'm afraid one day the whole thing's going to go like that. I'm going to just lose it. But until now, I can remember detailed food on the table. I can remember everything.
Orson Welles, let's get back. Orson Welles, Joseph Cotton. Wonderful parties, dinner parties, cigars, all that. Tell me about Joseph Cotton, Orson. Fun
great combination, great friends, great actors, both of them.
Right.
Orson, I think, was the best director ever. I worked in a picture with Orson, and I've never been directed like that. I think he was treated quite badly out here. I really think Orson had another big picture in him. And I think that caused his death when they cancelled doing it, because they said, you know, he'd spend too much money. Well, for heaven's sake, he bought Citizen Kane under $1 million, you know, and still today it's number one.
Number one, yes.
So,
tell me about any children.
No.
No children?
No.
See, it's like the Duchess and Dukes of Windsor. Same thing, you guys.
Well, we didn't plan it.
No, but you know, you had a great life. Would you say you've had a great life, Patricia Medina?
Oh, I had a wonderful life.
Looking back,
wonderful.
yes?
Yes. I think well, I wouldn't change anything that I'd done. I would change, of course, losing Joe. I would change that. I haven't got the power to do that. But otherwise, I wouldn't change anything.
What would you say, looking back, and what would you say the best times of your life, living with Joe, and what has been the best times of your life?
I guess just living and traveling together, being together. We had to be together all the time.
You've had great travels. This book, tell me about this Layback in Hollywood. The title, come on, Patricia, I'm reading. Were you a layback lady who just let things happen?
Well, actually, I was very laid back, because when I first arrived and they telephoned me at the hotel, I was married to Richard then.
Richard Green.
Yes, and an agent telephoned me and said somebody wanted to meet with me at MGM. I said, oh, I can't come now, I've got a headache, you know,
Right.
do it in 2 weeks. Or else have whoever wants to see me come over to the hotel. I can't go out, so I was laid back.
Uh-huh.
And then I know that has a double entendre. I know that title, and as I grew older and life became different, I took the hyphen out of laid back.
Right, right. But I say a world beauty, look at this. Give me a close-up on this. This is what Patricia Medina, look at your beautiful. You did some wonderful movies, medieval type of movies, Wicked type of movies.
I was always a bad girl and always in costume. Yes.
Yeah, in costume pictures. Some wonderful, matter of fact, I thought it was the Three Stooges. You played the Wicked.
Yes.
The Three Stooges.
Queen, yes, the
Queen.
Queen.
You played the but my favorite of all your films, I think it was the lady with the iron mask.
With Louis Hayward.
Louis Hayward.
Nice actor.
Wonderful.
Nice actor.
Tell me about Louis Hayward, working with him.
Well, he was making a comeback, and they decided to remake all the pictures that Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland had made. They made several pictures together, and they decided to remake them with Louis and myself. And we got on terribly well. It was right at the beginning, after I'd done Secret Heart and that, and I was beginning to feel a little more secure. Louis and I worked very happily and very comfortably together. We never discussed our private life. We just were.
I think you did a movie with him with you dressed like a boy. And he was,
yes.
remember, in a cabin ship.
I had to get into his cabin on the ship. I had to pretend to be a cabin boy.
What happened around the set? Or even your little
no,
clothes?
I wore a very loose jacket, and then the producer, when he looked at me when I did my wardrobe test for him, he said, "You don't look like a boy." For God's sake, you know. He said, "Your ears aren't like a boy." So I got a little bit fed up with this, and I said, "What the devil do you want me to do, wear a moustache?" And he said, "Wonderful idea, wonderful." And Louis wasn't there that day. And I had to go to Max Factor's. And Bob Roberts at Max Factor's, you know, Bob Roberts, a friend of mine, I'd been to him about all kinds of things. And he said, "Patricia, tell me it isn't true. I have to put a moustache on you." I said, "It is true." He said, "Give me a beautiful moustache." He was almost in tears. And then Louis said, "I refuse to play a love scene with the girl with the moustache on."
Tell me about Clark Gable, and how about
Clark was divine.
Clark Gable.
He was the king. He really.
When you first arrived to Hollywood, you met Clark Gable.
Yes, I met him at Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Mary Lee's house at a spaghetti dinner.
I want to show this to my audience. Close up on this picture, Joseph Cotton and Patricia Medina. This is your wedding day. Where was that at?
David and Jennifer's.
At David O. Selznick and Jennifer Jones's house?
Yes.
And I understand they threw a great wedding for you.
Oh,
and I
beautiful.
understand something about the Japanese. Come on, tell me about the restaurant. Who's it, Jennifer Jones or someone?
Oh, no, that was Betty Davis.
Betty Davis. Tell me about that.
Well, Joe made a picture called Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte with Betty and Olivia de Havilland.
Good movie.
Fine movie.
And
fine
movie. For Olivia, it was for Olivia. Because she was...
Then Betty gave a party for Olivia.
Yeah.
And she gave it in a Japanese restaurant because Olivia was born in Japan.
Japan, yes.
And so we all went in, we had to take our shoes off, and we sat at a table, like with this table were resting on my knees, and you know, that's the way we sat, which was really rather uncomfortable.
Right.
And then all the courses came, and we started eating the raw fish and this, that, and the other, and people seemed to be enjoying it, but the two or three of us found it a little uncomfortable. and a man named Jimmy Wolfe, who with his brother produced a great English film called Room at the Top that made Signore, big star, Simon
Right.
Signore. And Jimmy leaned right across, just as Olivia was about to make a speech, so there was a deathly hush in the room, and Jimmy leaned right across me and said to Joe, in bell-like tones, "I can't help but wish she'd been born in Paris."
Olivia was a wonderful. She's wonderful, isn't she?
She still is,
I know.
yeah.
She lives in Paris, doesn't she?
Yes, indeed.
She lives in Paris. You travel.
Would you see, she should have lived in Paris then, we'd have got a better dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite movie of yours or Joseph Cotton? Do you have a favorite?
I like Joe in Shadow of a Doubt because it was so unlike him, and he was so elegant and he was so mild. Well, I liked him in everything.
It was unlike him, you say?
It was so unlike
Uh-huh.
him. Of course, he played this bad, but
Right.
and he was so elegant and so attractive. He was getting all these rich widows and murdering them. They played the Merry Widow waltz all the way through
Yes.
it. And when Teresa Wright, who was in it with him, when she finally got at him and threw him off the train, this
Right.
evil uncle of hers, and finally she'd done the great thing. She threw him off the train, and sitting in the theatre, all the women went, "Oh no!"
Teresa Wright, great actress.
Oh.
He surrounded himself with great actors and great
Great
actresses. And you did too.
Oh, no.
Look at you, Earl Flynn. Tell me about you and Earl Flynn.
Oh, I didn't work with her.
No, you didn't, but
no.
you were friends, weren't you?
Don't give me that kind of a look. No.
No, I don't mean it like that. But you had some loves in your life,
Oh, yes,
Patricia.
indeed. Of course.
You know, you're British, and a lot of British girls do have a lot of loves in their lives when they were young, don't they? Or did
I don't know. I can only speak for one. And I don't think I had that many, but I certainly. That's
But your
why
true
I took
love.
the hyphen out.
Yes,
but
yes, of course.
I'm glad that I did, because you see, I was able to define my true love. I wasn't able to
Yes.
think, oh, I wish I'd been closer to so and so, or stayed longer with so. No, Joe was it, and I think it's all right to have a couple of loves.
Of course. Lay Back in Hollywood is by Patricia Medina Cotton, and the book is it's going to have book signing all over the place. You've been signing books. The book is doing extremely well, and you're going to have one in August the 13th. Here.
Yes, at
Where?
Barnes and Noble in Westwood.
Barnes and Noble in
Yes,
Westwood, and then you're having
7:30.
okay, and then you're having another one on Labor Day somewhere around here.
Yes.
But the book is getting great reviews. Tell me about the reviews. Everyone's loving this book.
Yes, I got great reviews. I got an awfully good review in the Washington Post too, an absolute rave. So that made me very happy. I've written another one, but I think it's going to be a movie.
The movie. Okay.
Not about me. No,
I understand.
It's
If you
fiction.
were not an actress, what would you have done?
I probably would have stayed in England
Uh-huh.
and got married. I really don't know what I would have done. There's always been a little bit of devilment in me that my two sisters didn't have quite as much of, so God knows where I might have ended up. Perhaps it's just as well I did become an actress.
Give me 3 words to describe Joe Cotton first, and then Patricia. Give me 3 words.
Joe,
Joe.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. That's wonderful. And how about Patricia Medina?
A woman in her time.
It's wonderful, Patricia. Wonderful. When you see yourself or Joe Cotton on film, because he's on film all the time, on television. You're at home watching it. What does go through your mind?
That's the only time I cry.
Really?
I have cried inside a lot, but not outwardly. But when I suddenly see, if I turn the television on and I go into the other room and I hear his voice, that does it. It's his voice. It's the whole thing.
Was Joe Cotton spiritual? I mean spiritual.
You mean, did he believe?
Did
Yes,
he
he did.
believe?
Yes,
He
he did.
did.
Yes, he did.
And to the end, very to the end. He wasn't bitter to the end. He was.
Never.
He was never bitter, was he?
Never bitter, never complained. He worried about me.
Constantly, isn't that wonderful? 30 years of this great romance of love of this wonderful man you were married to.
We were
30?
separated for one day.
In all the 30 years? Only one day?
It was hell.
It was hell. Really? What made him so, that love affair? God, it was a classic love affair. This book has got to make a movie of this. It's such a great love affair between two people.
Well, somehow I wish it hadn't been that great. I think that it's so all-consuming and that when you lose it, it's traumatic. Losing anybody goes through a traumatic time. It's particularly bad. Once upon a time I would have said to have loved and lost is better than not having loved at all. But now I think it would be nice to love a little. Yes. To love a certain amount. To love and be able to be parted and get together again and do that. But that didn't happen to me.
Patricia, Joe Cotton and you had a great, wonderful life. Great friends like Jimmy Stewart. You've had the cream of the crop.
They were a good couple.
Jennifer Jones.
Jimmy and Gloria Stewart were a very happy married couple.
They were another happy marriage, yes. There are very few there's only 5 or 6 of them here in this town, and you're one of them. Like Jennifer Jones,
well,
another
she's
one.
Great friend.
She's been your great friend.
Very loyal friend. She was great to me when I was going through it all after I lost Joe. She was absolutely wonderful.
What a great lady she is.
Yes,
I interviewed her granddaughters and her kids and Robert. Matter of fact, that movie was a great movie, The Strangers of her son. Joe Cotton, Orson Welles. I want to show this if I can, but we're closing. So, Patricia Medina, the book signing's coming up, and it's going to be at...
It's going to be at Barnes & Noble on the
13th? Okay. And boy, am I coming down there.
I hope so.
This is Lay Back in Hollywood. I love the title. Thank you very much.
I hope you like the book, too.
Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
You're a great lady, and we love... Well, Hollywood has changed a lot. What do you think? Just give me last words. What do you think about Hollywood nowadays?
Well, I'm really not connected with Hollywood nowadays. I'm sure that people who are in it think it's great. I, of course, feel the nostalgic time of before, the glamour, when people were more remote.
Right.
You couldn't get at stars that closely.
Right.